All right, all right. Welcome back to week 2 post game 49ers. The 49ers took an L today, 23-17 to the Minnesota Vikings. The curse lives on. The Vikings win this game on honestly just a really well played game. They made very minimal mistakes, and the other side of the ball, the 49ers made a lot of them. It was not a clean game by any stretch, but I think there's some positives to take out of this game. So I will start by saying, before we even talk about the Niners, this is a weird week. Okay, I'm currently looking at the scores across the NFL. All right, it's a tie game in Baltimore, Vegas against obviously the Ravens. Excuse me, and that game's coming down to the wire. That's random. The Cowboys on their own turf got blown out by the Saints. Score to that game ended 44-19. Packers beat the Colts with a backup quarterback. Aside from that, like the Jets squeaked by Tennessee, which looks like they're going to get it there. Detroit is losing to Tampa Bay right now. They actually have just lost to Tampa Bay. So it's just a weird week. All right. I can't be too mad. It's week 2, figuring things out. Obviously, no Christian McCaffrey. On that note, Jordan Mason had a fantastic game. He ran for 100 yards. Still played his best, I can't be mad at him. He played really well. No errors on his part. Where I see some issues is with the Niners offensive line. Now, last week, the Niners O-line played really well. They only allowed, I think, 2 sacks. One of them was Brock just giving himself up. This week, completely different story. At least 5 sacks. I don't have the official stats up, but at one point there was 5 sacks. I think it might have gotten up to 6. Just sloppy O-line play. And a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that the Vikings were running off of the momentum of that game. I mean, obviously they had a great week 1 win against the Giants, which probably doesn't mean much. It's the Giants. They're the worst team in football. But you obliterated that team. And then you walk into week 2 on your home turf, and early on in the game, there's the 97-yard bomb to Justin Jefferson on a complete safety breakdown for the 49ers that just goes all the way for the touchdown. So at that point, that stadium is amped. So they're just going to ride any and all momentum that's going through the stadium at that point. And that's what they did. They utilized that. So that D-line absolutely ate the Niners O-line. And there's no other way to put it than that. So looking at the stat sheet for this game, obviously Brock didn't have a great game, probably because he played with pressure in his face the entire time. He had 2 picks, could have been a third. There was a weird one at the end that was just a blown up play from the start. Honestly, just a terrible play call, if I'm being honest, and that's on Kyle. But yeah, he felt the pressure all game long. He still threw for 317 yards, so it was a decent game, through the air at that point. But you really got to look at the pressure that he was being sent, and you have to think that played an enormous factor in today's game. As far as reception is concerned, Debo went for 110 yards on 8 receptions, so that's wide receiver 1. Brandon Aiyuk, 43 yards on 4 receptions. There's a part of me that thinks that Kyle is kind of he doesn't have him in a doghouse, but he understands he missed all of training camp. And so in terms of getting him a lot of attempts on the ball in the first few weeks, is probably not his number 1 priority. So right now he's utilizing Debo and honestly Juwan Jennings as wide receiver 1 and 2 more than he's using Brandon Aiyuk. However, with that being said, Juwan Jennings did have two receptions, but he's been one of the main options for Brock through the first 2 games. And so it's definitely clear, I talked about it last week, that Brandon Aiyuk is still getting into game shape. It's going to take a few weeks. We know that. I'm not too worried about him, but it's frustrating that we have to go through this growing pain with him trying to get into game shape. Trent Williams is actually kind of in the same boat. I think he was responsible for at least 2 of those sacks. going right by him. One of them was completely unblocked. He had his hands full with another one, but it's one of those plays where I've seen Trent handle both those guys, one rushing in from the side and the dude he's actually, blocking right there. So I think we're seeing some growing pains in terms of just getting to the season and getting it going for the 49ers. I think we're seeing that across the league as well. There's a lot of random scores throughout this week. There were a lot of random scores last week as well. The Saints look like they're the best team in the NFL right now. They've come out 2 weeks in a row and just dominated the field. So, time to panic? Absolutely not. I'm not super worried. The curse lives on from 1992. The Niners haven't won in Minnesota, but we'll have their number everywhere else. Come back to Levi's, we'll have you. Straight up. The Vikings team is really weird. I don't know if they're actually good or not. I think they're riding a lot of happy waves right now, but I think that they'll be a solid team. There's concern now with Justin Jefferson. He went down with what's described as a lower leg injury in the third quarter, towards the end of the third quarter. And so there's a little bit of concern there. We'll see what happens with that. But I'll get to my game balls here. Honestly, I have 2 to give out, but really only want to hand 1 out. I'll hand 2 out, but I got to give my first game ball to the man, the myth, the legend, Fred Warner. He had 2 absolutely massive punch outs during this game. The first one was just a great read by him. He, as usual, just every time he tackles, he's punching for the ball. And he talked about in like an Instagram live earlier this week, how the punch outs are just kind of a second nature thing for him. And you can absolutely see that every time that he tackles. He's leading with that arm, just punching at the ball every single time. He punched out there, and then he punched it out on Sam Darnold when he was going out of bounds. Obviously, there was no play on the ball at that point, but knocked the ball out of his hands and just showed how, dominating he is. And then there was another play going down the field. The Vikings are rolling. This is right after Justin Jefferson gets injured, and it's looking like it's going to be 6 for the Vikings. And it's like on the 5-yard line, and Fred just flies in there like the heat-seeking missile he is and just punches the ball out, and the Niners recover it on the 1-yard line. So for that reason, I'm just looking at what Fred brings to this defense. It's all effort all the time. And I saw him at the end of this game when the Vikings were kneeling it out. He put everything he had into this game. And he's probably the only guy, aside from the other guy I'm about to give a game ball to, that gave his all into this game. I think this was a really weird week. So, second game ball, I got to go to Debo. He's our wide receiver 1, and it is evident. I want to believe that we're going to start utilizing Brandon Aiyuk as a wide receiver 1 soon, but it's not his time yet. And obviously sitting out through OTAs and training camps and et cetera, doesn't help your case. Right now, Debo Samuel is wide receiver 1. I know that he ended up limping out of this game towards the end. I think he's going to be okay. I'm hoping he was just gassed because the Niners drove that ball down at the end of the game, just trying to get any points up on the board within like a minute and a half span. It was honestly a great drive that did fall short after some just brain-headed play calling at the inside the 10, which actually I do want to say one more thing on that note. There were 2 occasions in this game where we got in the red zone and couldn't punch the ball in. The first one was in the first half when we had already gone all the way down the field. We'd converted a 4th and 3 shot to Juwan Jennings. It was a perfect throw for a first down. And then we continue to drive. We get all the way up to, I want to say it was like the 2-yard line. It was inside the 5. And again, another 4th down comes up. And I want to say I agree with Kyle taking a shot at that and going for the 7. Because at that point, 7 obviously would have been better than 3. We couldn't get anything going up until that point. And so it was like, yeah, it was 3-0. So it was like, you go in 7-3 and you're winning in a game that didn't feel like you should be winning at this point. So he takes the shot there on 4th down, 4th and 3 it was, and doesn't get it. So turnover on downs. Vikings then go for a 100-yard bomb is a 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson. And that was, that was one of the turning points in this game for me. So a lot of things went really well for the Vikings. Not a lot went great for the Niners in this game. And that's been the story rolling into Minnesota for the past however many years now. But especially these last 2 years. I mean, everything went well for them against us last year. We had multiple guys out. That is an excuse. I'll use it though. And they also executed on a lot of plays that ultimately the 49ers couldn't. So it comes down to execution. And the Vikings showed up with a great game plan today. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see what week 3 has to show. That's going to be a tough game too. I'll talk about that going into next week when Marcos and I sit down and talk about it. But yeah, tough loss. But it's week 2. I'm not freaking out because Cowboys lost. Lions lost. There's a lot of just random scores right now as teams continue to feel out this season in the early parts of it. So no time to freak out. We got time. And ultimately, I think that this team's going to figure it out soon. So this has been the 49ers Week 2 post-game pod. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, links in our descriptions down below. We love to chat, so absolutely just shoot us a comment, shoot us an email, and let us know what you guys thought about this game. So I've been Ben Retz. I'll see you guys later. Peace.